All right, so we continuing our discussion on what is beyond good and what is beyond evil. Our life is torn apart all the time. Every single moment we live, we always think what is good and what is bad. And the good and bad is decided upon the state of your mind. Whatever your desires are, if it fits, it's good. If it doesn't, it's bad. And all along, our mind is continuously torn between these two decisions. And ultimately, we are never leaving the world. So, what is beyond good and bad, we don't even know. There is something that is beyond good and beyond bad, and we have no idea, and that's basically unknowable, but it can be experienced. But we have never experienced it, we never know it, we never believe it because we don't know if it exists. And all our life passes by, basically deciding good and the bad. And good is again told to us by someone else. The bad is from our experiences. From our experiences, we accumulate experiences, we give it to our children, say, okay, this is good, so you stick to this. But then their life changes, the world is changing all the time. All of a sudden, the child finds that whatever was told to him that is good is useless for him. All our scriptures and have been telling us that, okay, this is good, this is bad and all that. But then the world changes, and then all of a sudden their definition of good and bad changes, and the conflicts happen, generation gaps happen, and things like that. It's like the kid is like 18-year-old, and we're telling him, you have to wear shorts which you were wearing when you were 5-year-old. And our traditional values and all those, they keep sticking to our heads so much, and we believe that we're giving some kind of cultural education so that we are doing something good to the kid. But we're not realizing that he has his own mind and he has to explore the world that is changing all the time. But the traditional values are bogging our mind so much that we ourselves don't come out of it. We believe that that is good, so we keep on forcing on our kids. And the life goes on with all these conflicts, and before we die, we realize that we have not done anything. We have not reached anywhere. Henry Ford once said that the history is more or less bunk. He says that we want to live in the present. And the only history that is worth, and it was beautiful, he says, Tinker's Dam, and I'll explain to you what it is the history that we make today. The Tinker's Dam is, like where this, the metal guy, when he puts the tungsten in a small cup, and he liquefies it, right? And then he applies that. You remember how the metals were used to be amalgamated, and then you dip it in that, and then you put the zinc or something in that, looks like mercury. So the dam holds something that has very temporary value. As soon as it's done with the job, it discards the rest, and it freezes, and then it has no value. So Tinker's Dam, they call. So he says, whatever worth a Tinker's Dam is only the history that is present right now. The history is being made right now. But we hold on to the past, and we think that based on that, we're going to shape this present and the future and all these things. That has no value. So the value is the current status that is in front of us. Our consciousness that is being presented to us, that's all it really matters. And then we can change our life based on our involvement to the present moment. But we lose our lives thinking that what is good, what is bad, this and that, and we keep sticking to it, and we never come out of it. So whenever scriptures were written, they were addressed to different set of people. And whatever was told to them did make sense at the time in those days. But a lot of water have passed in all the rivers, a lot of worlds have changed, and we keep on holding to the old values as if like they are the Sanatan Satya. And then we keep on losing our values, and we don't realize that there is something beyond all that. So a lot of teachings have been given to the kids. A lot of inventions have already happened. And if we tell the kids to stick to the old values, they're going to start questioning. And they're going to say that, well, the world is changing already. How can I live with the old values? It's like, say, oh, you have to do the jatra in the chariot. We used to take the bull cart. And now we have airplanes. Why don't just take that? Right. But we keep on saying, no, jatra has to be done in this. So all this, like the Jain Munis we talked about, that you cannot eat after 6 o'clock, right? That's it. But in the old days, there was no light. There was no fire. There was nothing there. The fuel was meager. And then it made sense to eat during the daytime and not at night. But now we have plenty of light, more at night than the same thing that they would not fly in the airplane. They would not, again, because they say, well, this is a scripture says that you cannot travel, you cannot use the vehicles. That's orthodoxy, and then you're really twisting the values of the scriptures. So we have to eliminate this kind of formal wisdom that has been taught. Wisdom cannot be taught. Wisdom has to be developed from your experiences. Every single second, every single moment that you go through, you realize what is wrong, what is right. You ask yourself, you live in the present, and you realize, you write your own scriptures, and the wisdom develops that way. Wisdom is not something that can be taught. In Tao teaching, it says, eliminate formalized wisdom and learning, and the people will benefit hundredfolds. We are walking around with the burden of our scriptures. Vedas were written this, and to make people believe in it, we tell them, oh, these were written by God, spoken by God, and this and that. We give such a extraordinary value to all these scriptures that we tend to believe. We bow down, we pay, and then we are really walking around with that past in our head all the time. And anytime we want to do this, oh no, scripture says we cannot do this. Scripture says we should do this. And that really kills our spontaneity. Every mind that is created has to be spontaneous. We have to be able to create our own history and move on. Instead of that, the scriptures hold us. So the Tao says that eliminate formalized wisdom and learning, and the people will benefit hundredfold. And eliminate hypocritical humaneness and righteousness. That all the scriptures, all the religions teach you the righteousness. It says, oh, you should do this, and you should do not do this and that. But that's something that is coming from outside. It is not coming from within. If you are good by nature, that has value which is thousandfold more important than you trying to look good. Scriptures that you should help the needy people. What if you don't feel like helping needy people? And we keep on doing just so that we fit in the society, we look good. But looking good has no value unless you have inside, you have a good value from within. So the values has to be established. But we are so busy trying to look good, trying to appear good in the society, and then we never pay attention whether our inside mind is cleaned or pure or not. So we waste our time and we waste our opportunity. So eliminated the hypocritical humaneness and righteousness, and the people will restore dutifulness and benevolence. Then people will actually become benevolent. They will actually feel for each other instead of something that has been told. And eliminate trickery and profiteering. Because outside people look very savvy. They look very elegant, very sophisticated. Oh, this is very civilized society. The more civilized you are, more conflicts happen. There are nice, and you go to the villages, people are so nice. People are naive. They are genuinely good by heart. But you come to the society in the cities, and the people are very sophisticated. But more sophisticated, there are more conflicts in their mind. Because inside, their mind is on the money. They want to make a profit. They want to cheat people, but they want to look good. So there is always a conflict, and the conflicts leads. That is the thought-speech disintegration. What they're thinking and what they're doing are two separate things. So in that conflict gives rise to a lot of psychological illnesses, schizophrenias and depressions and anxieties. Because on one hand they're torn, they want to look good, but inside they are not. So instead of spending time in cleaning our hearts, we always work around trying to look good. So the more civilized a society is, more psychological illnesses is. America, being the most industrialized nation, has the highest number of psychiatrists, and there is no surprise because of all these conflicts that we are creating. There is a tremendous strain by the society created on us. I always talk about it. For example, precocity is it's a disease. The children, all these innocent girls, 8, 9-year-old, they are being pried upon by the adults and all that, and then all of a sudden they become teenagers so fast. Inside, their heart is so innocent, and yet they are looked upon, they have to respond. And they respond the best way they can. but there is a psychological conflict going on all the time. We don't even let our children grow up innocently and naturally, because there is always a continuous demand from the society what they're looking for. So those are the real examples of the thought speech disintegration, and yet we are in civilized society. You cannot do this, you cannot do this, you cannot do this, but inside people have desires, and that those desires manifest, and then all these complexities of the behavior happen and the society falls apart. So eliminate trickery and profiteering, and the people will have no thieves to fear. If inside people are good, then there is no desire to steal. I was doing a thesis on with my son, like they were trying to compare the thesis on the Buddhism, and the concept that I really liked in that was, they said that Buddhism tried to instill the fear of God by being good, and inside by the meditation and all that, to reach to the purity of what you are inside. And once you know the purity inside, that's really you. So right from the childhood state, they are raised, and then you compare. Now that you compare with the society which has fully grown and civilized, but we have, look how many policemen we have, how many judges we have, how much money we spend on punishing people and maintaining all the prisons and all that. And when there is no fear of God, then all these crimes are committed. But at the same time, there is another solution, where the fear of doing something wrong is already there. Right from the beginning, the people don't commit any crimes. We were in Laos in December 2012, Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia. We went to Laos. The people are so simple. The thought of crime does not even cross their mind.
Right.
We went on a river, Mekong River, upstream. We sailed about 2.5 hours to reach a cave called Pacau Caves, P-A-C-A-U, Pacau Caves. In that, there are literally 10,000 statues of Buddhas. And each one was put by a family when they had, say, wedding, or a child is born, and to celebrate the occasion, they had put a statue of Buddha. All shapes on size, and metal, and bronze, and wooden, and some of them had actually termites in them, even like that old statues. Imagine the antique value of this. This has been going on since the birth of Buddha. Buddha must have been there close to 2,000 years back, and the Buddhism has been there for a long time. No guards, no sentries, no lock and keys and nothing. And the first thing I asked, thinking an American mind, I said, how come there is no control? I said, there are no lock and key. And he says, why? Why do you think? He has no idea that people can steal these statues and make a profit out of it. And you feel ashamed to be in a place like that with that kind of dirty mind, And it's amazing country, and yet it's gonna get corrupted again from civilization and all that. So again, if you know the purity of your soul, and if you know that's what you are, there is no reason for you to steal. Because there is no gain in this world, and there is no loss in this world. Loss and gain are only if you attach the values to the material things. If you do not attach value to the material things, why would you want to steal? Because you know you're not going to take it with you. But our mind is continuously looking for something to hold on to, grab it, and accumulate, and then go on with our life doing that, not realizing that at some point we're just going to come out of all these things and walk away from these things. But that idea is continuously on our hold, because we think that life has something to give it to us. There's something to grab and acquire something out of life. But that's not true, because we don't know our true nature. This thing is died out.
Died out?
Yeah. So when you accept the beliefs system from outside, it literally stops you from thinking what is right and what's wrong. So instead of accepting the ideas from outside, we should generate our own ideas, our own thinking, And the mind has the capacity to think and compare and have the wisdom. And that's the true knowledge. Whatever is given to you from outside is the acquired knowledge. Somebody says you are Hindu, somebody says you are Muslim, somebody, but it's all because people told you. You did not you were not really born knowing that you were Hindu, but that knowledge was given to you. So whenever this is something that is given to you, is the passed on knowledge. That is, scripture says, it's avidya. Avidya is something that's really not necessary. You might use it for becoming a doctor, for becoming an engineer, and perform in the society, but that's all it has, its value built into the material world. But something beyond what you really know who you are the soul, you are the Jivatma and the Paramatma. That is the true knowledge, and at that time, the true knowledge is going to take you further into the life. So literally scriptures make you dumb. The more you believe in the scriptures, the more dumb you get. So ultimate wisdom has to rise from within, and that will happen only if you go within. So you have two options. Either you keep on believing the scriptures the rest of your life and then pass on and not do anything. Or you live with that conflict that yes, scripture says that, but my inside experience is something else. But because I live in the society where everybody's following the scriptures, everybody's doing this, so I have to do this, and that with that inner conflict. But that's fake. That's a false, and that's you kind of cheating yourself. So the really true revelation can happen only if you go within and ask yourself what is good and what is beyond. Because if you really rise above this duality of what is good and what is bad and what is evil, beyond all that, everything is good. If you really come face to face with God in meditation, you realize that everything and everybody is the creation of God. How could there anything bad in the world? It's our concepts that divides the world into good and bad. So once you realize your existence, which is beyond the mind is the creator of goodness and badness. It's our own only relative concepts. And when you rise above the relative concepts, then everything is good. Because you are in the world of real of Paramatma. So our efforts only should be directed going there. So there is only one bad thing, is to not to be able to converse with God in your daily life. The more detached you stay away from Paramatma is bad. The more closer you get is good. And you don't have to stop doing anything in the world because everything is good. Including the bad experiences you go through that you call bad, there is always something good to that. We have lost that capacity to appreciate the goodness in every single thing. We get hurt by the thorn and we hate the thorn. We enjoy the fragrance of the flower. We say, oh, look, roses are good, thorns are bad. Not realizing the whole plant itself, starting from the roots that you don't even see, to the stem, to the leaves, to the thorns, ultimately was meant to create the experience of the flower and the fragrance that came out of it. It's the totality.
I was under the impression the thorn is to prevent from animal eating.
Exactly. But that's what I'm saying. So if the thorns were not there, the flowers would not have existed for you to realize the fragrance of the flower.
Animal would eat it.
Absolutely. That's what I'm saying. The whole plant is responsible for the ultimate experience that but we want to pick and choose. We do not want to accept Ram is Ram only because of the Ravan. Imagine Ravan did not exist. Ram would have nothing to do. He would sit quietly in his own. So everything is all relative. We like the day and hate the night. But we don't realize that day has no importance. What if there was 24 hours light? Then we would not even know the importance. People move from here to California and then they say, well, there is sun every day. Now we enjoy because you go there because there is so much darkness and cold and everything we enjoy. But once they go there, after 6 months they are hating because their own mind is meant to choose good and the bad. So it's our mind that is at fault. Our mind divides everything. And that's where we suffer. We always go back and forth. I always talk about that famous Mullah Nasruddin joke when he comes home drunk and he's trying to open the door and he's not really been able to set. So the policeman comes and he says, Mullah, you want me to help you? You know, he says, if you really want to help, hold on to the house. It's shaking too much. He said, we are the one who are shaking. The world is fine. Because of our calling it good and bad, we suffer. We wake up and then we want to discuss with people. Oh yeah, you're right. You're suffering now. So then we want to add to the misery. And it's, oh, my son did this, or my parent did this and that. And then we go on like this. And when we always have sympathizers and people who come in to enjoy. And that's how we always broke down. So they say sadhu is something, one who does only good and avoids the bad. That's traditional sadhus. But sant, if he's go beyond that, bad thing doesn't even happen with him because he's connected with Paramatma. Paramatma is good to everyone. He accepts everyone and he treats everyone right. So behavior of a sant, it happens basically where you see the ultimate glimpse of Paramatma. So we want to rise above the bad. So we ourselves gonna stop picking and choosing people. For us, everyone will be the same. The same way, all the things that happen in your daily life, we will appreciate because it's ultimately God gave you a chance to exist. Even your existence itself, something you need to thank God for that. Because you could have been chosen not to exist. You could be hiding in your spiritual form and not able to be breathing. Even the breath that we take, we have to thank God for that. Because every little thing, if you start appreciating, then our negative outlook in life changes. And it benefits. Every single moment, you can extract the pleasure. Think that you say that you have control on your breath. Try stopping it for a minute. You can't.
Right.
You are literally being forced to breathe.
Right.
Paramatma is literally telling us, no, you have to breathe. It's like mom telling, no, you have to eat. You have to eat. Come on, it's good for you. He's the one who's breathing into you.
Right.
Simple thing. Think about it. Small little things. You can say, thank God I'm alive. Thank God I'm breathing. All those little thankfulness to God will make us humble. And we expect the life. We expect too much. Instead of that, our expectation will go down. And we'll be thanking God on the contrary for every little thing we have. Sometimes people become too smart and again start picking and choosing. They say, well, if God is everywhere, how come? And that's all the time I have discussion with Sushma. Right? He says, oh, lions are so bad, they kill innocent animals, He said, again, who's saying that? It's our mind that is saying that killing is bad. Innocent, well, lion has to feed himself too. Nobody talks about lion because, lion is cruel. So we start again picking and choosing. It's the order of life. There is always a day, there is always a night. There is a suffering, there is enjoyment. All those things are just part of life. But we always like to pick and choose. And so all these questions are raised at the mind level. And all these questions are asked by the people who are living at the mind level. And they will never understand that because they are never gone into the zone which is beyond the mind. So, evil, what you call evil or good is your belief. Again, beliefs are held at the mind level. But when the mind is transcended in meditation, all the beliefs disappear, including the concepts of good and bad. And so transcending the mind is the ultimate goal of life. So you may call, say for example, stealing bad. And everybody will say, yes, stealing is bad. But think again. There is a story of Lao Tse, the great philosopher of China. He was appointed as a minister in a king's kingdom. They said, well, Lao Tse is very wise, so he should be, judge says, the king said, I don't have to make all these decisions all the time. Why don't you do it? Because you are even wiser than me. So the first case come to him. So one guy had done a robbery at a very rich guy in the town. So Lao Tse listens to both sides and all that. He says, okay, put them both in jail, 6 months. He says, what kind of solution is that? The robber of course, should go to jail. But the rich guy was so furious. He says, what kind of punishment is that? He's the one who stole my money, and you're putting me in jail. He says, Lao says that if you had not accumulated this much money, he would not have thought about stealing from you. You are stealing officially, and obviously, in fact, you have so much money that I myself had thought about stealing from your house one of these days. He says, all the desires to stealing comes in when one person accumulates too much. And there has to be a crooked way of making the money. Now,
It's the same thing with bribery, you know. They can
Right.
vote the people.
so Lao Tse made the argument that the only way you can become too rich in a society is from stealing. So, if the stealing is bad, then you both should go to jail. If stealing is good, then there is nothing wrong with it. It basically, you did it open hand, he does it at night. That's all. So, would you call stealing a bad or good? It depends. Your belief. So, if you are communist, then this is a good thing that you're stealing from rich and giving it to the poor, because he himself is a poor, so he's helping himself from a rich. Nothing wrong. If you're democratic and you're benefiting a capitalistic society, I say, yeah, it's good to be rich, because by the efforts you have become rich, because of position you may be in the society, you took the advantage of it and you accumulated. So nothing wrong with it. But then in that society, stealing is bad. So it all depends upon your mind. So everything is fostered by the place where we live in. So if you are living in a communist in China, then say, okay, that's not so bad. So there was a story, the movie, did you see The Last Emperor? Beautiful movie. So apparently the last emperor, that's where the cultural revolution takes place. And then communism comes to the country, and all these kingdoms are stripped away. The forbidden city is all torn apart. All the gates are opened up. People can walk in. This is a Republic of China, basically, where everything belongs to everybody. Everybody is treated equally. And the movie starts with the emperor is held in captivity along with so many other people. And one of the nights he tries to cut his wrist and tries to commit a suicide. And he's found, halfway there. So they catch him, and then they know, these officers of the Chinese army, that this is the emperor. So he argues with the Chinese officials that, why don't you let me die? He says, no, I know why you don't let me die, because if I stay alive, I can be working like other people in the fields, and I can be helpful to the country. That's why, right? So the Chinese official gives a beautiful answer. He says, how bad is it? Is it really that bad to be helpful to your country? So being an emperor, he had the advantage. He didn't have to do anything. And the beautiful life issue is that nice movie. And literally, these emperors were not even allowed to go out of gate. And this is hundreds of acre big city that they have, forbidden city they have created. From the time they're born till they die, they never step out of the gates. So that kind of life he had lived, and all of a sudden he's forced to be living with our average people. So again, if you are in a communist country, being rich is a sin. Being thief is not so bad. So that's how the beliefs are created by your surroundings and what you are being told. So the same thing, one time, one beggar had made a statement that by taking someone else's money, I'm doing them a favor by relieving of the money that they have accumulated. Because every time the rich people donate, they feel good. But if the rich people's money is stolen, they go through all the hell, to find out who is the thief. But if they give donation, they actually feel good. So he says, I'm officially allowing them to feel good by taking their money. So I'm equally responsible. So that's the problem. So right and wrong is all the concepts that are created. We should rise above all this. Communication with each other throws wrong ideas in our head. And that's why I say the scriptures make you dumb. Terapanthi Jains, Jains have thousands of sects. Digambars and Svetambars, and this one of them is a Terapanthi Jain. Terapanthi Jain teachings is that if somebody is thirsty and you find on the side of the road, do not give them water. Why? Because if you give them water, and if the guy survives and he commits a crime down the road, you are responsible for it. He is thirsty because of his previous karmas of life. And so even giving a simple water to a thirsty guy is a sin that you are committing, and you are responsible. Imagine the complex mind who has created these kind of concepts, right? It's such a crooked mind that you worry about your karmas, don't worry about anybody else. How stupid can you get? And this exists. This is for real. I always give that example of in China, I said about, right? So there is a village and there is a big fair going on, and one guy falls because the well did not have a covering. So he happened to be passing by, he wasn't paying attention. There were hundreds and thousands of people around. He fell. Now there is no way of escape from the well, so he keeps shouting and shouting and shouting. Nobody listens, and finally one Buddhist monk passes by. Oh, he says, yeah. Oh, I'm sorry you fell. I'm sorry, you must have done some bad karmas, so you fell. He says, yeah, I understand that, but take me out of the well at least. He says, no, I cannot interfere with anybody's karmas, because if I save you and you do something bad, I will be responsible. So the Buddhist monk passes by. Meanwhile, the guy says, I'm going to drown pretty soon. I hope somebody comes by. Keep shouting and shouting. So a Confucius guy, and Confucianism was a big thing over there. So Confucius monk passes by. He says, yeah, oh, I'm sorry. It happened because the well did not have a cover. Now, Confucians were more into politics. They went to fix the kingdoms, that emperors, and rise the people against the emperors. And so they wanted to set up the system of the society. So he says, yeah, I'm sorry. Let me go to the city hall and complain to the city hall that there was no cover on the well. He says, I understand that, but you can do that later. But at least come and take me out first, and we'll go together to... No, I cannot. I have to go to the city hall first and make sure that all the wells which are made in the future have the... Meanwhile, what if I die? He said, that's fine. What is one person against the whole society? Society has to survive. Your future children will not fall in the well. I will make sure of that. And the guy passes by. And finally, a Christian guy passes by. He says, oh my God, you fell into the well. So he jumps into the well and he saves the guy. The guy was so happy. He says, I'm glad you really saved me. I really believe that Christianity is the ultimate religion. I'm going to convert to be a Christian. He says, well, not so much. In Christianity, it says, if you help the needy, you go to heaven. I'm making sure that I go to heaven. In fact, we believe, if we wish that more and more people fall, so we can go and help them. In fact, you go and tell your neighborhood, everybody should go and jump into the well, we'll come and help them. So this is what scriptures do to you. When you do not interpret the scriptures. And this interpretation is not needed when you become soft. In Chinese proverb, they say, the Tao Te Ching says, become like an undyed silk. The silk is so gentle. It's like feathery light. And before you put any colors, it's all pure white. Become like a gentle, undyed silk. And you live like that. And that's when you know what is right, what is wrong. Whatever takes you to the God is good. Whatever takes you away from God is bad. So you make your own rules. You may write your own scriptures. Do not get fooled by all these stupid advices which have been given to you. And that will happen only you start questioning all these things. You have to be curious and you have to be questioning. For that you need to use your head. And that power has been given to all of us. But we never question anything. We keep on doing things mechanically till we die. And our mechanical follower is not here today. But what's wrong with this? So again, you learn from that too. So world is created and world is full of dualities. Find beauty in everything. Day is good, but nights are beautiful too. They have their own beauty. Enjoy the silence of night. Enjoy the peace. I wake up in the morning and I enjoy the serene silence. 4:30 in the morning, absolute bliss. Everybody's sleeping. and you go outside, and then you see the sun rising and the birds chirping. Everything is beautiful. Everything is in its own place. That's why in Buddhism they say, the Buddhist monk says, the snowflakes fall to the ground, every flake in its own place. To the micro level, God has decided everything. Highest consciousness has, after all, created you. The thinking machine, the powerful man, could not have happened. Now, before the man was created, you were not there. I wasn't there. Nobody was there to design design man. It was all designed by the highest consciousness. But we don't even pay attention to the consciousness. We don't learn from consciousness. We don't communicate with consciousness. And we think that we have something in our hand that we can create. Creation is happening without whether you know or not. Creation is something that is happening as we speak right now. We should be part of that creation rather than taking the matter in our hands, and we think our scriptures are created, are the best, and this and that. We have to go beyond all that. We are hooked on the past too much. So, if the Romans were not there, Jesus would not have been created, because Romans gave, crucifixion to Christ. If Christ was not crucified, Christianity would not have been, because all the sympathy was poured towards a saintly man who did nothing but preaching to the helpful to the needy people. So again, things happen. Again, the Second World War, they say 6 million Jews were killed. Fine, I agree, it was one of the worst things. But imagine how much sympathy now there were created against the heinous crimes, and that changed the course of the history. What is 6 million versus billions and billions of people still living on the face of the earth, and billions of more will be born. Again, hopefully, will be living in a better world. So everything has two sides of the story. We are the one who keep calling things bad and good. So the question is asked that, again, like Maharishi Raman was asked by a German tourist, who had come to India. He says, then why are things so bad then? What is the meaning of all these things? Why to create something that is good and bad, and what is the purpose then? He says, first of all, the purpose is asked by the people who are living at the mind level. Because whatever we do in world, there has to be a purpose, otherwise it's meaningless, right? So Maharishi Raman gave a beautiful answer. He said, just to thicken the plot. Just to have a little spice in the story. After all, it's all dream. It's all dream. We all gonna wake up one of these days and realize the whole world is nothing but a dream. But if in the dream, if there is no good and bad and so-called good and evil and all that, we would have no fun. So just to thicken the plot, all these things were created. So we have to just go with the flow and enjoy the world as it is. The contrast that is created is the fun of life. If you have a white letters to write, you need a blackboard. So without that, the white letters do not become significant. Writing white letters on a whiteboard would not serve any purpose. You cannot communicate with the students in the class. So all these things are relative, but we get caught into choosing and chasing. That's where we suffer. So when we rise above, then the real bliss happens, and the transcending the mind gives you the bliss and the peace. So God is everywhere, and when we appreciate that, then we realize that there is a possibility of what is beyond good and evil. Our concepts fall. So our intelligence as it exists is very small versus the cosmic intelligence. And the cosmic intelligence has created millions and millions of galaxies and stars. And what it has created is fascinating. And instead of us focusing on such a vast aspect of life, we keep on small things. Oh, I did this, I achieved this, I made this much money, I built a big house, and all these things. Compare your achievements with what has been already achieved. Until we do that, we will stay in our ego, keeping our ego alive. And in the God's world, until the ego is sacrificed, God does not appear. Either you, that's why Kabir says, a Sakri Gali. Sakri Gali is either you go in or Paramatma comes in. One or the other. Until you sacrifice yourself, that's the ultimate death. The death of a body is not a death because you are not the body, you are the soul. In meditation, that's where you realize you are that infinite soul. You have that power to realize that. And when you realize that, where is the death? Death happens to the body. You were child, you were young, you were old, you will be old, and you will die. But that change will happen to the matter. Matter was never there. You were spirit before you picked up the body. And then you're going to give up that body. Another body will be given to you, and you will give up that body also. But you don't change. Until you realize this, you don't see the play of Paramatma. To see Paramatma in someone else, you have to realize Paramatma within yourself first. Then only you can see it outside. I was reading a beautiful article written by Farid Zakaria in Time magazine yesterday. Because it's all about this Crimea thing going on. Russia is trying to take over the section of Ukraine, right? Say in these days, owning a larger land has lost its value. To have bigger kingdoms like Alexander, wanted to win over the world and all that. Small little communities like Japan has created miracles. So what really matters is the ability to utilize even few resources, that material resources, but it's the will of the mind of the people that changes the world. Owning little more of a land is not going to solve the problem. Russia is big as it is, but having another piece of land is just a manifestation of that ego, that bigger is better. So he gives a beautiful examples of several countries that have done so well. They say Singapore was expelled from Malaysia. It used to be part of Malaysia. And once it was expelled, they considered it as a swampy town. And the vision of, the leader of Singapore was Lee Kuan Yew. It had an amazing vision. He transformed the economy of Singapore single-handedly by converting into a tax-free port. And the economy of Singapore has gone thousandfolds. Turns out to be another 10, 12 years, they say it will have the highest per capita income in the world. Because he buried his past. He did not look at the disadvantages that he faced in the past. He always stayed in the present and he looked to the future. He utilized the human power of coordinating, and the efforts that he put in ultimately led to the success of Taiwan. We're walking around with so much burden of our scriptures, and we keep on bragging about it. Oh, our glory is so good, our past was so glorious, and this and that. And those things are bogging our head. And all those past is haunting us. Actually, it's interfering us from progressing in life. So, he considered less of the disadvantages of the past and invested more into the advantages of the future. And he built up the whole country on a single path. The same thing, China. When the revolution took place, the whole mainland China was created as a big country. Small island of Taiwan was left on its own. And there were Chinese people there, but they just didn't include in the mainland China. The Taiwan, they thought, is going to perish and it's going to disappear one of these days because China has no resources, no the material resources there. But China single-handedly, after the revolution, they became the fastest growing economy in the world for last 40 years, 4 decades. And they have become one of the fastest growing countries. All because they were obsessed with progress and they're obsessed with the future and the competitiveness. They put their heart into the present and they synchronized with the consciousness and they buried their past. Same thing, the African country, Rwanda, he said, was torn apart by the genocide, one of the biggest genocide where millions of people were killed in ethnic cleansing. And the leader, Paul Kagame, took over. They were haunted with that kind of genocide happening in their country. And it just could not get any worse. The next country, Congo, they already had a civil war going on and all that. A lot of refugees crossing the borders, this and that. In such a situation, he took over the control of Rwanda. All he did was he buried the past. And he says, all we care about, accepting what has happened, that there is nothing we can do about it, move on to the future. And it has become a crown jewel of Africa. It's one of the fastest growing economy, attracting more and more tourists, and more enterprises are being set up, and has become a darling of country of Africa. So instead of wasting our life on the past, and instead of dying that synchronizing with the present, meditation is not just sitting quiet in the quiet corner 20 minutes and doing meditation. Just the exercise that you do has no value if it does not start spilling into your day-to-day life. We have to change our inner life, and inner life has to manifest outside. We should not really get hooked on whatever happened in the past, or we should not be boasting about all the future, all the past glories of India and this and that, and none of the countries. That's why you see the dynamism is, at least you can palpate in this country. This country has 200 years to brag about, but that's about it. But every little thing comes in, they break down the laws, they move on. The moving on should be the most important thing, because the creation is happening right in front of us. If we all hold on to the past, we are not part of that creation. So Tao says, use your inner light and restore your insight, what you really are, and you will be free from dangers. And this is what it means to be well versed in Tao. Tao means the highest consciousness. So staying in the present moment is the most important thing. And present is where the actual history is being written. Whatever history happened in the past has no value. Either we become depressed about it, or we keep boasting about it. We waste a lot of time, but we never look at the present. By doing that, we're missing out our present moment. There was one historian we talked about, Burke. He had been writing the history for last several centuries. One time he was sitting, and all of a sudden there was a big open ground in his backyard. All of a sudden he heard a gunshot wound. Immediately he ran, and he wanted to see what happened. One guy was dead. The gun was sitting there, and it was still hot gun, so you know that the bullet was fired. The guy died on the spot. He asked people what happened. There were hundreds